This is one of those great Disney movies where you have all the 9 old men of Disney lore working in concert, but in different capacities. Eric Larson was a brilliant animator, and he was the godfather to my whole generation of animators by running the training program at Disney in the late 70s and early 80s. Eric had animated a lot of great characters, Figaro and Pinocchio. He animated Peg in Lady and the Tramp. He was a really superstar lead character animator, and in this film he got to direct.
Eric Larson directed the sequence in the woods where she dances with the prince. And it was an opulent-looking sequence. It's gorgeous, the music is beautiful, everything about it is wonderful, except that the cost went through the ceiling.
I can tell you the name of that sequence, sequence 8, because they were on it so long. And I think they had started sequence 8 even before I arrived at the Disney studio. And I got there, and after being at Disney for a year, they were still working on sequence 8. And even I worked on it.
Sequence 8. Yes, actually it was the first scene they had done in the entire movie.
When you were doing a pilot sequence, you were learning out what the characters were like, you were figuring out what works, and you were working out story problems.
I remember there were assistants that were working on the princess and the prince that would make one drawing in the morning and one drawing in the afternoon. That's 2 drawings a day, which made them very precise. There was very high expectations, especially working on those main characters.
Eric Larson, he was trying very hard to make this the moving illustration that Walt Disney wanted.
Walt also said, I don't care how long it takes. I want that up on the screen.
Don Bluth was someone who worked on the cleanup for that, and he said, we felt we were making the Lord's Prayer because every line had to be a certain width.
The girl, because she was so hard to draw, really, the line density and all that stuff, that they could only do, if they were really lucky, maybe 8 drawings a day.
Everything's so wonderful.
8 drawings a day, that's 1 drawing, 1 girl an hour, but 24 frames go by your eye in a second, so you need 3 days to make 1 second.
Ouch. that's got to be painful kind of work.
I worked with Mark on the scene where she's walking through the woods. You hear this la da 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 da. And I had to do it 4 times because first he roughed it, then it was cleaned up, and then they changed the design on the character. And every time I'd have to go and do all those in-betweens all the way through the entire scene. At the end of it, Mark took me over to lunch. At the end of the luncheon, they brought out a cake. So that was my reward.
We wanted to make something that had never been done before. And we all got caught up in it. And everyone fretted over it. Can we do this? That's what Walt's asking us to do.
And Walt said, let's see what you got, guys. And so we went to the little theater upstairs. So we watched what we had up on the screen, and Walt's remark was, boy, is this dull. And he says, we got to do something, guys. Give it some life and something that's fun. Let's get some animals into it.
So Eric went back and with the aid of Milt Kahl, put more forest animals in the scene and so on and so forth. Well, the scene was a long scene to begin with. There were cost overruns, and so the front office came down on Eric and said, did you know that scene cost $10,000?
And Eric Larson said, nobody told me. I didn't know it was, it was going over budget like this. That was probably one of the reasons that he was removed from the film about, I think, halfway through.
It was sort of an unfortunate thing that happened because really the result is absolutely brilliant and beautiful and aesthetically exquisite.
I remember when I met Eric Larson, and I said, Eric, I remember in the book by Bob Thomas, The Art of Animation, which is a lot about the making of Sleeping Beauty, toward the end, there's a picture of you and Walt standing in the hallways looking at backgrounds from Sleeping Beauty. And I was just wondering, do you recall what you were both talking about? Because it looks like you must have been so proud of this great art that had come so far, and it's now so beautiful to look at. And Eric said, do you want to know what we were talking about? Walt said, this stuff has gotten so expensive, we might have to close the studio down. We don't know if we're going to make it. That's what we were talking about in that particular moment, which I found shocking. I had no idea.
It's always good to look back on something you've done and realize that even though you might have gone through a great deal of difficulty doing this project. You look back on it and realize it was all worth it.
And I think as time has gone on and the ability or inability to duplicate anything with this level of sophistication, it has stood the test of time and it has become, in its own right, something that will stand forevermore at the very top of what Walt Disney and his artists were able to do.